Liebe Zuschauer, wer kennt ihn nicht, den US-Finanzier und die Investmentlegende George Soros. Sein Vermögen wurde von Forbes 2012 auf 20 Milliarden Dollar geschätzt. Und bekannt wurde er als Shortseller mit seiner Wette gegen das britische Pfund 1992, womit er ein Vermögen verdiente. Seine Spekulationsstrategien polarisieren, finden Bewunderer, aber eben auch Gegner. Und jetzt fordert er Deutschland auf, sich nicht mehr gegen die Eurobonds zu stellen oder eben gar ganz aus dem Euro auszutreten. Was das genau heißt, wie er das begründet und natürlich, wie er die weitere Entwicklung in Europa sieht, das fragen wir ihn jetzt. George, nice to have you here. Thanks that you took the time for the interview.
It's my pleasure.
You stated that the euro crisis is far from being over. And 1 year ago, you were talking about a 3-month window for Germany and Chancellor Merkel to act. Otherwise, the threat of a possible break up of the European Union would be immense. The European Union and euro is still there. So how much is left before the breakup from now on?
Well, actually, you did have a climax last summer within the 6-month period when it looked like the euro could break up, and that was already affecting the markets. And then Germany made some concessions to make sure that the euro survives. And then the markets celebrated, had a big relief rally. But that jubilation was premature because you will have another crisis. And then another crisis. We go from one crisis to another. Each time Germany does the minimum to keep the euro together, but that's not enough to turn around the dynamics. And the result is that eventually the euro is going to break up the European Union. And that will be a tragedy of historic proportions. And I would like to warn about this and prevent it, because it can be prevented, but it can only be prevented by Germany, because Germany is in the driver's seat. Germany doesn't want to be, dominating, but it is dominating. And by not acting and not doing the things that leadership would require, creates this process that is going to destroy the European Union. I think it is really clearly visible, and I try to explain to the German public exactly what I see. And I think this is a disaster waiting, and I think we must do something.
How far are we away from this disaster?
Pardon?
How far we are away from this disaster?
We are close to it, but we won't go over it. I think it's going to be perhaps touch and go for the next year or so. If Europe survives it, it can last 25 years. Or let's say the Soviet Union lasted 70 years. In the end, it collapsed. So it could last quite a long time. The longer it lasts, the bigger the tragedy, because Europe is going in the wrong direction, both financially and politically. So I think it's clearly visible that that's what's happening, and yet you keep on doing it. So what I'm saying, Germany has got to make a decision. Either commit itself wholeheartedly to a European solution, or decide that really they should leave the euro because the differences are too big, and let the rest of Europe issue Eurobonds and extricate itself from this crisis. One or the other. Either is infinitely better than to keep on not doing anything.
But you would prefer the Eurobonds?
Of course, I would prefer the Eurobonds, but when I listen to the people here in Frankfurt, given the present attitude of mistrust, what I hear is that they don't believe that if they introduced Eurobonds, that the southern countries or the other countries wouldn't overstep the mark, so they feel that it would not work. They themselves don't believe in the fiscal compact.
But do you think the fiscal union would be needed just before we could implement Eurobonds? And aren't we far away from a fiscal union?
No. You have a fiscal compact, and what I'm proposing is that, first of all, you have to realize that what causes the problem is that government bonds are very risky, because government bonds can be restructured and people could lose money. You have the risk of default, which has been caused by entering into the euro. So this I explained that it has really transformed the member countries to the status of a third world country that is indebted in a currency it doesn't control. So that has to be corrected by converting the existing stock of government bonds into Eurobonds, where each member is jointly and severally responsible. So Germany would be then responsible for all the debts of the rest of Europe. And that is terrifying to the Germans, because they say, well, we can't afford it. But they don't need to afford it, because once they agree to it, the bonds would never default. They would never have to pay. They give a guarantee, but the guarantee would never be called, because it's convincing.
Have you that already explained to Chancellor Merkel? Because she said as long as she lives, Eurobonds will not implement it.
This is the Chancellor. Well, this is her position. And then Germany should leave and let the rest of Europe have the Eurobonds. And then the problems would be greatly resolved, because then the euro would fall in the exchange rate, and the debt is denominated in euro, so that the debt would, in real terms, would also fall, and the rest of Europe would become very competitive with Germany.
But what about Germany? The competitiveness of Germany, would that really be an option to for Germany to go out of the euro?
Well, it is an option, but then Germany would have to pay the price, because then all the burden, or most of the burden of adjustment, would be on Germany. So you would have a strong currency, but you would then have problems of competitiveness, and instead of blaming the rest of Europe that they are not competitive, it would be you who would not be competitive.
How about the investors who have government bonds right now? Do you have government bonds? Do you invest in government bonds?
No.
So how about the investors then? They don't have the trust anymore. Or what is the problem there?
No, they would have every reason to trust, because there would be no danger of default. Look at the gilts, the British bonds. The debt ratio of Britain is actually worse than the debt ratio of the euro area, excluding Germany. So the British bonds yield more or less the same as the bunds. So then the Eurobonds of the rest of Europe would be similar to the British.
So how about the ECB, the role of the ECB? She's playing a good part right now. What do you think about getting this guarantee about that they will do everything to save the euro?
Well, it would still continue, and it would the ECB
would need to be continued.
Of course, if you didn't, then of course Europe would break up in individual currencies. That would be a field day for speculators, but would be very bad for Europe.
So actually, when we have implemented Eurobonds, what role will the ECB play then?
The ECB would remain the central bank of the remaining Eurozone, and there would be Eurobonds, and Germany would be outside. You could find some other arrangement where Germany could still be within the central bank, but probably simpler if you return to the Bundesbank. Everybody trusts the Bundesbank, and the Bundesbank would be quite happy to resume its role. So then you would have the Bundesbank, you would have a stable currency, you would still be within the European Union, and you would have a problem of adjustment because your currency would be too high. Everybody would rush into the reconstituted mark. So then you would have a problem with competitiveness. And then you would have an interest that your currency and the euro shouldn't go too far apart. And since you are part of the European Union, free trade, then you would have a cooperation between the two sides to maintain stability, not to let the currencies move too far. That would be a very workable system, and it would actually fulfill the dream of John Maynard Keynes, who was really the best brain about these situations, that you would have the creditor countries and the debtor countries each committed to maintaining stability.
But if you look at the investors right now, they are really uncertain about how everything will work out right now.
Yeah.
So, normally they take gold as a safe haven. And right now, the gold price is has been falling. And you sold a lot of stake in your gold holdings. So what do you think about the gold? It's not a safe haven anymore?
No, it was supposed to be the last refuge. But when really the crisis gets really severe, then gold remains the one thing that you can still sell. Naturally, the price goes down. And that means that it isn't quite the safe haven that you imagine it to be. So people are disillusioned with gold. And that means that they sell gold, and the central banks will accumulate it. So probably gold won't go down very much, but it won't go up either.
For what kind of period do you think that will last?
Well, that's the new situation. If the euro falls apart, probably gold might go up in terms of euro and go down in terms of the German mark, for instance.
So, talking about the euro, what do you think? Where will the euro be? Because it's right strong at the moment, if you look at the situation in Europe and you see the euro, it's quite strong. What do you think where it will be at the end of the year?
I think the euro right now is strong because Japan has changed sides and has gone in for unprecedented quantitative easing. Therefore, the Japanese institutions are switching from Japanese bonds for bonds of the other countries. So the bond market, the government bonds in United States are very strong. The French bonds are very strong, and that has an effect because it means buying of euro. So it's really what people should realize is that Japan is desperate to escape from 25 years of stagnation. And Europe is just now entering that period of stagnation. So unless you realize that, you may end up with 25 years of stagnation. But, Japan is a country, so it can live through it. But the European...
you were talking about a currency war. Do you still see that?
Well, so let me finish.
Yeah, okay.
So Japan has survived it and is now in this desperate attempt to escape from the situation into which Europe is just now entering. But the European Union is not a country. It's an incomplete association of countries or union of countries. And it's not going to survive that 25 years. It will fall apart. So the euro will destroy the European Union. It may take 25 years, but that is what's going to happen. And if you can clearly see this, then you really must be determined to do anything that can be done to stop that, because that would be a tragedy of historic proportions. So you can either go for Eurobonds or you can leave the euro. Do whatever you decide. It's your business. But do something. Don't just keep on doing what you're doing, which is destroying the European Union. I know that's not your intention. I'm sure that Germans want to be part of the European Union. But it's going to break up, and it's going to be breaking up with tremendous mutual recriminations and unsettled claims. And that will be worse than when you started creating the European Union. So please do something.
You were talking about a currency war. Do you still see that?
Well, the whole world is now engaged in quantitative easing, with the exception of Europe. So Europe is the odd man out. So that is going to create tensions, both in the currency market and in the bond markets. And the quantitative easing is also not coordinated. So if it's not coordinated, it's going to be competitive. And that is reminiscent of what happened in the 1930s. So it's not a happy development.
So where do you see, just this last question, the euro at the end of the year? Where will it be?
Well, I know exactly where it will be, but I'm not at liberty to tell you.
So are you invested in the euro?
I don't run the fund anymore, so I don't have positions.
Mr. Soros, thank you so much for the interview.
Good.